Hey everybody, Onepeg here with another updatey tark video. I don't know. So for those of you that haven't been able to log in recently, Battlestate Games made an update to the game, actually a couple of them. One of them was a hotfix, and the other one, they ended up kind of taking the game down and making some modifications. So the first super major change that happened a couple of days ago was that the traders kind of globally had their purchase prices nerfed by about 40%. When you would see Bitcoin that normally would sell for, say, 145K or so, now it was about 100K. This coincides with another set of posts that BSG made where they increased the cost of the market fees for items that were sold in the flea market, and they said that it was temporary. So, for instance, items like the dry fuel barter item, for a perfect example, which has a base cost or value of somewhere around maybe 10K rubles, but retails on the flea market for somewhere around 200 to 250K, has an incredibly high fee. So, at a 200,000 ruble sale price, I think it makes somewhere around like 70 to 74K, which means that the cost of selling that item at 200K is somewhere around 125,000. It's pretty significant. Much, much greater than what it used to be. Also, the player base's general issue with the majority of this is that it slows down the gameplay and progression of the game, naturally, because now there's less money to be circulated and higher fees for transacting that business. There's going to be less money in the pockets of the players. Couple this with a pretty significant nerf over the last few weeks of loot spawn chances on all of the maps, and it seemed like progressively getting to be worse and worse over time. Now it's even harder to progress. Maybe not for people that have thousands and thousands of hours in the game, like the most common streamers that we all watch, see, and follow, but for the casual players among us in our player base, that seems to be a little bit even more daunting for all of them because they're still learning, and there needs to be a way for people to be able to make money. Well, so BSG, I think, kind of realized this, and today they ended up releasing a tweet that said that they upped the global loot spawn chance on all maps by about 30%, which is nice. They lowered the flea market fees that we had been experiencing by about 20%, and they upped the skill progression rate for all of these soft skills that we need, like strength, for instance, to upgrade the vents, by another 20%. So we should be able to progress through that a little bit quicker. But there was another line item in this tweet that I wanted to pay extra special attention to, and that is they changed the types of purchased items from the traders and rebalanced the buying prices of them. And what exactly does that mean? We all know that you can take an item, almost all of them, and sell them back to a trader for some amount of money. And depending on the trader, even though multiple traders might be willing to buy the same item, some of them would buy them for more and others would buy them for significantly less. So if you didn't have an item that you wanted to sell on the flea market, but you still wanted to sell for a little bit of money, the way that you would go about doing this was as follows. First, you would sell any item that therapist would buy to therapist. Second, you would sell any item that skier would buy to skier. Disassemble guns and then sell those parts to skier because he would pay more than anyone else for those. Third, you would then sell whatever you had left to mechanic, whatever he was willing to buy. Melee weapons would be sold to fence, and Prapper, Peacekeeper, and Jaeger were kind of vying for last place, depending on what it is that they would purchase. But this has since all completely changed. And now the traders kind of look like this. Here I have a breakdown of different types of items that could be sold to vendors if someone so chose. And those items are kind of sectioned off into which one of the vendors would pay the most for it. So in the case of like a stripped down gun, ammo, and a mag, that would typically go to mechanic. The armor, rigs, weapon attachments, helmets, etc. would go to skier because he would pay the most for them in the old system. The axe or melee weapons and grenades would typically go to fence. And all the rest of these things, barter items, food stuff, meds, cases, keys, all that would end up going to therapist, right? Well, all of this has since changed. And the shuffle kind of looks like this. Now, aside from the willingness for different vendors to buy certain items, for instance, like Jaeger will now buy unarmored vests, like the BlackRock rig or Scav vest or or Commando vest, any of the unarmored chest rigs is something that Jaeger will pay for now. He doesn't pay the most. In the case of any of the wearables, the person that pays the most now is Ragman. Ragman actually pays more for armor and wearable items than any other vendor. In the case of weapons, attachments, and ammo, for all of that, the person that pays the most for those now is Mechanic. In the case of melee weapons is Jaeger. Fence ends up coming in a close second. One thing to take as a note is Fence does pay more for items that are sold to him now than what he would previously pay. Jaeger is willing to buy these. And in the case of anything that Jaeger is willing to buy, which are things like food, for instance, and in this case now, cases, Jaeger actually pays the exact same amount for those items that Therapist does. So there's no discrepancy between either one in terms of what they're willing to pay. And in the case of Therapist, she still tends to buy all of the same stuff. But in the case of the traders, now the way it's set up is rather than having to take one for the team, in the case of somebody like Jaeger, you can spend the money on him and selling those items off and not necessarily have to worry about really being behind in terms of monetary progression, at least with the new system. Now, what this does change that is a major, major difference is that Skier now becomes the worst person to sell just about anything to. He offers the lowest amount of money for anything that it is that he's willing to buy. He still buys an awful lot of the same stuff. It's just that he pays an awful lot less for it than just about everyone else. So now Skier, rather than being the vendor that everyone goes to for things like attachments, is now last in line. And Prapper really only has a purpose in terms of what he's going to buy insofar as grenades. Originally, there weren't any vendors that were willing to pay any amount of money for grenades whatsoever, and you ended up having to sell them on the flea market or sell them to Fence. But now Prapper is willing to buy nades, and he's really the only game in town for that. Skier will also buy grenades, but it is still, again, for less money than what Prapper is willing to pay. So with all of these changes, it looks like the following. We have this huge shuffle of what the traders are willing to pay, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, Ragman being Ragman, he should be the one that deals with bulk items that are wearable. That's his whole shtick. So it only makes sense that he would sell more wearable items and offer better prices for those wearables that he ends up buying from other players. Didn't make a whole lot of sense that Skier, for some reason, was willing to pay more for items that he never resold himself. It's nice to see that there are vendors now that will deal in melee weapons, even though it is only one, but at least it's something other than Fence, and it's nice to see that we finally have a vendor that we can sell grenades back to. But given the way that Jaeger works and what he was willing to pay for items in the past, it always felt like a kick in the you-know-what every time that you were forced to have to sell him something just so that you could push up the trader rep. And now at least it ends up keeping pace with what Therapist is willing to pay, so it doesn't feel like you're getting burned so bad. Now, obviously, there still are some items that have a fee that is much, much higher in asking price than what it is that the going rate apparently is for them. And I'm not really sure why this is still continuing to be a sticking point. But I can tell you that BSG has ended up combating some of this at least. As of this recording, 6 hours ago, Battlestate also released one other tweet that said that they banned over 400 real money traders, or RMT traders, and numerous amounts of people that had purchased items from those people. And they said, and I quote, "We know what they do and how they do it. If you use RMT services, you will be banned too." And all I can say is, oh man, I love it. Love it. All of the mad lads showing up in the Twitter thread, crying about how it's not a bad thing and people should be allowed to be able to do this. I'm so glad that they are taking the initiative to ban these idiots. And I can't wait for the next round. The only other thing that came from this, I guess, moment in time is that Anton got banned for a little while.
Profile is banned. Wait, I actually am banned. I'm actually banned. What? What do you mean, dude?
Just playing along and got himself banned. I guess it wasn't necessarily for RMT, though, so that's good. It was for aimbotting. But it's Anton. So obviously that doesn't make any damn sense. Don't worry, though, guys. He ended up getting back just fine and was able to continue his stream after, 20 minutes or so. Of course, then the cumulative fuckboys that are Reddit ended up chiming in about how if they weren't a famous streamer and didn't have Nikita on speed dial, then they're just boned. But I look at it a different way. I think that given the popularity of somebody like Anton and the people that would report him just for trolling because it's Anton would end up having him garnered more attention from people that are reviewing this kind of stuff and just have somebody not realize that it's actually Anton's account for the 100th time or whatever that he's probably gotten reported and he ended up falling through the cracks. I don't think if you're a normal average player that you have to worry about something like this because you don't have a target on you like somebody that's got 5,000 viewers every time they stream. So I probably wouldn't worry about it too much. You know what I mean? Anyway, guys, that's kind of what I have for you today. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. If I did, whatever, I'll put it in the next video or not. I don't know. But I'll see you in the next one, okay?